this is the Hudson School Board of Education meeting, and I have a motion to approve the meetings. So, can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. At this time, the board will go into executive session. The Hudson School Board, District Board of Education will convene into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion, or demotion, or discipline, or suspension, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I get a motion to move into executive session? So, can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. We will reconvene at approximately 7 p.m. for our public meeting. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, September 22nd, and this is the Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have just completed our executive session, and we are now back in public session. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda this evening?
I'd like to pull fiscal 3.3, which is the library tax warrant resolution.
Does anybody else have any?
I'd like to pull item 3.4, professional personnel.
So we'll be pulling fiscal item 3.3 and professional personnel item 3.4. Can I get a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda as stated, please? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so let's start with fiscal 3.3, the library tax warrant resolution.
Thank you. My question with this is that there's a difference in these amounts that are listed here for the amount of the resolution. In the first whereas line, it says that it's going to be a tax levy for the school year 21-22 of $1,153,183. And in the second whereas, it talks about it's estimated that the anticipated income will be $1,640,000. And I'm just wondering what the difference between those numbers is caused by and what happens if there's leftover.
The library is like those. They have a tax levy and then they have other revenues. The other revenues can be pilot. They are part of the internship pilot. They might have other type of revenues like fees. So that's what makes the difference. On the one, we're approved, or the board is approving the levy at that level, and the other one, the total income of the library. Libraries that also get state aid, so that's all the revenues that they get. So the difference between the total income and the levy are those other revenues that the library gets.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Can we get a motion to approve fiscal 3.3? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
This professional personnel 3.4. What is your question, John?
No question, just to be able to abstain.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve professional personnel 3.4? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One abstention.
One abstention.
All right, thank you. So that brings us to our audience comment section for non-agenda items. Because we feel community engagement is important, the Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. Please note that the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. The board is here to listen. Please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions this evening. This is because the board trustees and the superintendent take your comments seriously and want to have sufficient time to thoughtfully process your comments and to research issues if need be. We will consider your comments as we deliberate at future meetings, or we'll have the proper staff member follow up with you at a later date as appropriate. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for public comments and has established the following guidelines for those wishing to address the board. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to the public comment section and will be called in the order in which they have signed up. We would ask that groups designate one individual to speak on their behalf. It is not permitted to cede your time to another speaker. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and affiliation if applicable. Letters, petitions, or written material should be handed to the district clerk prior to your comments. All comments must be directed to the board, not to the audience. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. The board vice president will be timing the comments. We'll give a 30-second warning to the speaker and indicate when the speaker's time is finished. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Although we take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address these in open session as per state and federal privacy laws. We would ask that you use appropriate administrative channels for these items. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner, so that our meeting can serve as a model of appropriate civil discourse for our students. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board may recess the meeting until order can be restored. Please remember, if we're not to participate in the public comments portion of the meeting, written comments to the Board of Education may be submitted in lieu of speaking. Please see the agenda or the district website for contact information. We will now begin our public comment period on non-agenda items only. Anybody sent it for non-agenda items?
First person is Scott Hoffman.
Hello, my name is Scott Hoffman. I live in Portland Manor. I have 2 children in Furnace Woods and 1 about to enter. I'm going to speak quickly, so forgive me because I only have 3 minutes here. We've become accustomed to wearing masks in our society as a matter of safety and respect for others. But I would like to address other concerns that the parents of children in schools have over the mask mandate and ask the question, is it worth trading our liberty and the liberty of our children for the safety in this case? Thomas Jefferson famously wrote, when you abandon freedom to achieve security, you lose both and you deserve neither. Statistical manipulation. In 2020, the flu disappeared from statistical charts. Why? In July of 2021, the CDC admitted that the PCR test does not effectively detect COVID-19. In December 2021, the test will stop being used and we will see the return of the flu in statistics. In a published article by the Infectious Disease Society of America, they found that at 25 cycles of amplification, 70% of PCR test positives are not legitimate cases since the virus cannot be cultured. It is dead. And by 35 cycles, 97% of all positives are false and non-clinical. So if our, just so you know, the COVID PCR test that we commonly use works at 40 cycles. And it's already been admitted by the CDC to be completely unable to distinguish between COVID-19, the flu, and the common cold, which is a form of COVID. So all of our reliable data on COVID-19 from 2020 till now rests on the foundation of the PCR test. And the flu numbers from 2020 have been mixed in with the COVID numbers. And the flu basically disappeared in 2020, statistically speaking. Then a reasonable person must ask the question, what pandemic are we actually talking about? Are we just actually talking about a case-demic, a falsely reported one? I think you're going to be finding out more about this in the next couple of months. And as the teachers of our children, that the school district, we're supposed to teach our children to follow science, to be scientific. So, as a school board, if you're going to impose a mask mandate on our children, then it is your obligation to produce the actual science that you are basing your policy on. Not a
30
recommendation
seconds,
from
sir.
some authority,
You have
but
30
the
seconds.
actual science. So, masks do not work. Despite the plethora of so-called peer-reviewed studies published in medical journals such as The Lancet, there are 0 responsibly conducted scientific studies that establish the efficacy of mask wearing in indoor environments. Dr. Fauci, who's now under criminal investigation for egregious conflict of interest and his funding of gain-of-function research, said masks are for
Time is up.
infected people. Sorry?
Time is up, sir.
My time is up already. Well, okay, so I intended to say more, but I just want to say that for all the children and the parents out there, there's only one way to stop a mask mandate. Okay, we're not expecting you to
Time is up.
actually
Time is up.
end
Everybody
it.
sit down.
This is how you end a mask mandate.
Sir, time is up.
We are following the guidelines from the Westchester County Department of Health and the state at this time, as well as recommendations from the Medical Association. Sir, you must wear a mask in the building, I'm sorry.
I'm not going to wear a mask.
Actually, neither am I.
Thank you.
Those
As a matter of fact, all of you should take these stupid masks off because you're not protecting anybody. You're actually causing fear by wearing these masks. You're causing fear, and it's irrational, and you should be rebuked for what you're doing to our children.
You're a vote.
I'm sorry?
You're a vote.
I can't hear you through your mask.
Okay.
Very good.
Your voice is
This person, to speak for the non-agenda item, okay? So the next person to speak is.
No.
Recess the meeting, Carmen, recess the meeting. Now that order has been restored, we can resume the meeting.
The next person that we'd like to is Joan Rowe for, on behalf of the Delingo family, she's going to say.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joan Vogt, Portland Manor District Parent, and I was going to come up here and speak on behalf of the Delingos to ask the district to please have more communication with parents about what's going on in Indian Point. But I'm going to give up my time so we can talk to the teachers, so they could not have more time.
The next person is Rachel Spence. Want to come up, Rachel? Good evening. Name and address?
Wait, can you hang on for 1 second? I don't think the microphone's working. We're having trouble hearing at the table here.
Well, we can't hear you guys back there either, so we can all. Is that better?
Yes.
You need my name and address? No. Okay. Rachel Fenty. Tonight, really quick, because I won't do my time, I'm here to ask about our fair contracts for our teachers, like for fair treatment as well. Our teachers deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, deserve to work in an environment where they feel safe and valued. Teachers working daily without fair contracts is not only unacceptable, but blatant disrespect. Thank you.
Nancy, thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Fenty. She will certainly continue to come to the table.
Nancy?
Wait, I didn't hear who you were.
Good evening, all. My name is Nancy Chinchilla. I'm the mother of 2 lovely girls that attend BB Elementary. I'm here tonight to voice my disappointment in this district's decision to require masks. I'm not here asking you to completely change your policy, but because I understand that there are parents that are okay with this. They're okay with muzzling their children, no problem. But don't be fooled. I'm not alone. There are many parents who know that this is not right. I strongly believe that parents and parents alone should have the right to decide what is good for their children. all right? We never seek the district's advice when our children end up in the hospital with a broken arm, a cold, or any other medical condition. All right, so parents are the decision makers here. God knows you wouldn't like me telling you what to do with your own children and their health. So I don't understand why the district feels that they can do that with our children. You surely wouldn't administer any medication in the school unless you had permission from the parent, all right, and specific instructions. So I don't understand why you guys are forcing our children to wear these masks. Fear mongering is completely absurd. 99.97% survival rate from this virus. It's all about fear. It's horrible. I'm here to ask you to reconsider and revise your policy to give us parents choice, freedom to choose for our children. I'm here to say that you need to do your due diligence and research, find out how this is going to harm our children in the long run. All right? They're breathing in their own exhaled breath 6 hours a day, sneezing, coughing throughout the day, and having to breathe that stuff back in. They're touching their masks, pulling them up, pulling them down with their germ-ridden hands, because that's what children have on their hands, it's germs. This isn't any protection. What are we really doing here? This is not healthy physically nor mentally, and you guys are contributing, all right? You should be held responsible for this, creating a mental health crisis. We don't know what the long-term repercussions are gonna be, like I said. All right, these kids are still developing, their bodies are still developing, their immune system hasn't even fully developed. To top it off, all right, you have also violated our freedoms. This began with a 15-day to slowly spread up to about a year and a half of these ridiculous mandates that have infringed on our freedoms as Americans. I'm here to demand that my children's freedoms to breathe freely again be restored. I'm here to demand that you return the rights to parents to choose what's best for their children. We should have the right to decide whether our children are masked or not. People like the sitting governor, Control, right? She's an evil person. They sit around in their high places in government, placing these mandates on us while they don't follow their own rules. I'm sure you all saw the picture of her taking a picture with her cronies unmasked while there's little children in front of them fully masked. That's hypocrisy. You've got the rich and famous also parading up and down in these concerts, the Met Gala,
Time is up.
awards, all right,
Time is up,
without
Amy.
the masks. All right, so do what is right. Do what is right. You were given these positions so that you would do what is right for the children. Represent us.
I would prefer not to have to recess the meeting again, thank you.
The next person to speak is Nancy Tucci.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Tucci. I live in Fulton, Hudson. I have an 11th grader and an 8th grader. And I am also here to talk about masks because I know you're following CDC guidelines, but it's getting a little ridiculous. When a student cannot scratch his or her nose,
I'm
Did
sorry,
I-
excuse me, did we have anybody who did not want to speak about masks? I know we've heard a couple of
can I
times.
finish? Can I please finish? I'm a little rude. It's very short. It's very short, okay?
I've already stated that we will limit comments if they are repetitive. I'm understanding that you're saying you're against the mask mandate.
Well, let me finish. It's just 1 minute at a time. A student cannot scratch his or her
1 minute
nose
and
without
I'm
being
somebody else
told
might
to
want say
pull
something.
out his or her mask. A student cannot take a sip of water without being told to go in the hallway. A student is told to constantly put up their mask or they will have to leave.
Sorry, ma'am, next speaker, please.
But a student has to put a hole in their mask to play a flute. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Can you please fight for our children? Give us the choice.
We have
That's all we
recessed the
want.
meeting
We want
because
choice.
You're not following the guidelines.
Thank you very much.
And that ends our public comment section this evening. I'm sorry that was.
That's not fair. That's totally not fair. That's not fair. That's why the public feels the way the public feels.
Exactly. I was not going to speak this evening as I have at the last two meetings and my voice is exhausted. But I decided that our teachers need a voice. They are the heart and soul of this district. It isn't the administration or the board, it is the teachers. The ones that roll with the punches, the ones that teach, love, and nurture our children. The ones that have to manage social distancing and keeping masks on children as little as 5 years old, as well as juggling in-person and remote classes, sometimes all at the same time. I remember when the Princeton plans were underway and the superintendent said, it will be as easy as teachers putting their stuff in a box and moving schools. That statement alone undermines the value of our teachers. They are so much more than stuck in a box. Without them, we have nothing. So if you expect to manage all that we ask of them through COVID and Princeton plan and 1,000 other things, I ask you to give them a fair contract. The administration has been lacking in common respect lately, and I witnessed that this evening as well. A nice couple approached me after the last board meeting and thanked me for speaking up. They said the district ignored them. I felt their pain among so many other community members and teachers as well. Thank you.
And then tell me that the comment is over? I mean, you should have told me I wasn't gonna be able to speak. I wanted to pay for a babysitter, and when the other mask man left, I would have left behind. That is why the community feels the way they do. The disregard and disrespect you have for us.
Is there anybody here who is not here to speak about the mask mandate? Would you like to extend the public comment period for those who wish to speak about other subjects other than mask mandate?
Yes, I second that.
Yeah, as long as it's not repetitive, it's not the same thing over and over.
And so Carmen, who's the next on the list? Mary Hillman, the next speaker.
And I'm going to be respectful of my relative did actually mention some things that I was going to speak about, but the fact that teachers are here at 7 p.m. after a day of work is absolutely disgraceful, and the fact that I'm here and I feel the need to come here in support of them because they don't have your support is maddening. You pushed through your Princeton Pen agenda last spring instead of prioritizing your staff and working harder to come to an agreement. You proposed a plan that cut teachers when children need teachers the most. Teachers are not just going to put their things in a box and magically be moved to a new school or a classroom. They're going to once again give it their own time to ensure our students walk into a welcoming environment. Some of those kids just for a year before they go to another building after next year. You are taking advantage. You are not listening, and we're waiting for your statements.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nancy McClellan. I live in the town of Portland, and I have, my children have gone through the Hendrick Hudson school system. I am a retired teacher of the Hendrick Hudson school system, and I come tonight to support the teachers. I have worked with these people. They're the hardest workers. After the last 18 months, I couldn't even imagine. I have a daughter who teaches in Croton. I know what she had to go through during this whole pandemic. I don't think I could have done it, and I thought I was a pretty decent teacher. The fact that they are doing this without a contract, 4 years or 3.5 years without a contract? I retired 6 years ago. I am embarrassed as a member of this community. And my biggest fear is that we are going to lose many of these wonderful teachers. We're always looking at what awards we've gotten and where we've been named and what we have done. Not going to continue to happen if we don't have the staff. And it is the staff that does that. Thank you. sorry, I can't really speak, Miss Stephanie Hickey, I live on Croton Hudson. Last September, I wrote an email to the board about the need to get back to basics. I have a fifth grader this year. I have a fifth grader who cannot write, cannot spell, he doesn't capitalize. In fact, it's embarrassing. I know the school year just started, I'm a teacher too. I'm a little nervous because he came home and said he has to charge his Chromebook. I do not want that heavy reliance on websites this year. I want him to leave elementary school knowing how to write. I also, back in May, emailed the guidance counselor with all of the changes that are going on in the state with the SEL program. I wanted to know if there was any new things going on in Hen Hub with the curriculum. And I was told no. And then I'm looking at Yorktown and Putnam Valley and all the craziness that's going on. And you know what? I'm worried about my son. I FOIA'd a request in July what the curriculum was, and I keep getting put off. My FOIA request has not been honored. I just want to know if there's any changes. I'm looking out for my family and to see if there's any changes that are not in line with our religious beliefs. There's a distrust thing that's here with the district. And I can tell you, when I was a kindergarten parent, I was a member of the PTA and I was gung-ho to be part of the other side of being a teacher. The
Can you
parent
address
side.
your comments to the board? Thank you.
I was wanting to be the parent side. And I gotta tell you, looking at it from a parent's perspective, I never experienced this where I worked. I never experienced this 3-minute timer that you're out of public comment. I mean, it's just the shaking of the head that it's dismissive. Under your mask, we can see the shaking of the head. It's a dismissive nature. And I gotta tell you, it makes me want to pull my kid. I don't want to move. It makes me want to pull my kid from this district. I don't want to leave this town. Stop being so dismissive of us. Stop the rolling and the shaking of the head. It's not nice. We don't teach our kids, our students to be like that. Why are you modeling that intolerance to the community?
30 seconds?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. Ms. Hickey, would you like someone to get back to you about your comments?
Yes, I would like my FOIA request to be honored.
All right, someone will follow up with you. All right. That brings us to our students.
Couple brief updates. We've heard comments today about local decision making, particularly to masks. We have been very, very clear, as has the state and the county government, that it is their mandate. The school district is not mandating masks. The school district is following the guidelines and the mandates from New York State and Westchester County Department of Health. They have been updated regularly. Our FAQ on our website is regularly updated and edited, and they're time-stamped with new language or new guidance that has come out from any of those agencies. The decision for students to wear masks rests solely in New York State and in Westchester County. It's not a decision of any individual or group in this district or the Board of Education. And that needs to I want to make sure that we're very clear about that. In the same vein, there have been conversations and some concerns around students wearing masks or the ability for them not to wear masks outdoors. The state has been very clandestine in providing very clear guidance. I want to be clear that if students are maskless outside, which is permitted, New York State has permitted students to be maskless outside. However, that does not alleviate or remove them from potential contact tracing or quarantine. That's a really important distinction to make. The guidelines from New York State and the County Health Department have been clear. The County Health Department further clarified that language earlier this week, and we'll provide that update to parents. In fact, we already made the update on our FAQ. If you are outdoors, if you are within 6 feet, if you are maskless for more than 15 minutes, you could be subject to contact tracing. That's really important for us to underscore. That while the state and the county has permitted social distancing with masks on to be at 3 feet, and while they have permitted you to be maskless outside, the quarantining guidelines are still in effect when people are not wearing masks. That is at 6 feet. If you're within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, and you are a known contact of a positive. Not my rules, not the Board of Education rules, New York State and the Westchester County Department of Health. I know that there have been conversations, particularly at the elementary level, about that, because principals or staff have been reminding students to put their mask on if they're outdoors, and if those students are going to participate in activities that will have them near children within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. It's not to mandate anything. It's not to take anyone's personal freedoms or liberties. It's to reduce the number of children who would be subject to quarantine, which means reduce the number of children that are not in our school receiving in-person instruction. That's the goal. Those are the rules that have been mandated for every school in New York State to follow. I certainly appreciate all points of views. I appreciate the comments that were made a year ago, a month ago, and even 10 minutes ago. But those decisions are not here in this room. And it's really important to understand that. I hope everyone does. With that, I'll turn it over to our team for a brief update, but I do want to mention and recognize Laura Nyer. Laura Nyer has been with our district about 7 years. She was a high school assistant principal for 4 and served as an executive director of educational support services for the last 2.5 years. Her last day with us is Friday. She will be leaving to really take what she would call a dream job in a local district, a job that takes her back to some of her roots before joining Hendrick Hudson. She was not able to make it. We anticipated her to be here, but she had a last-minute family matter that she had to deal with. Hopefully she'll be able to connect with the board in short order. But we want to wish her well and thank her for all of her efforts. We heard earlier today about the Herculean effort of our teachers and our staff, especially in the last 18 months during this unimaginable time. And Laura was paramount, making sure that we were able to keep the trains running on time, to make sure kids had access to instruction and teachers by way of Chromebooks. May not have been perfect, but certainly we ended up in a lot better position than other districts in the state and the country. So we appreciate her time with us. We appreciate all of the initiatives and goodwill that she brought to our team and to our district, and she'll be missed. I'll now turn it over to Enrique to give a couple brief updates from his side of the shop, and then we'll go to Margaret and Lisa.
Yes, good evening, board. At this point, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get our audit. I have good news. We did very well last year. Last year was a year that we were able to save some money because of COVID. And that would help us going forward because, as we all know, we're losing $20 million in pilot payments. That's something that I wish everyone would understand. That's a third of our budget. And the only way we can make up that money is by taxing the community. So that happened to us. It was not the district administration or the board that asked for this. It was that Indian Point for 60 years was giving us a third of our revenues. And now that's gone. Now it's going down to 4. So, that's it.
Barbara?
Good evening, everyone. Beginning days of school, so we're busy trying to make sure that our teachers have everything that they need to do their jobs. Everything is in place for them, and where there are in situations where we may be fixing findings, that they at least have the comfort of knowing that there is no pressure as we get off the ground and kids. In addition to that, I'm happy to share that the district published its first request for proposals ever for a universal pre-K program. This is looking for collaboration in the field. Potential collaborators are due to return their interest by the end of the day on Friday. So we look forward to seeing if there indeed is an opportunity for us in this school year or not.
Good evening, everybody. So we have used our ARC funds a little bit differently this year for our high school program. We're doing something called supplement. I can stole it from the middle school, but it has been something that we want to make sure kids have the opportunity to meet with teachers. We know we're coming back, kids are stressed. It is something that our students with disabilities can access and get some extra homework time and get some extra review time with special education teachers. So I actually saw a parent in the parking lot, and I hope it's going to continue to be as positive as it is now. We are very fortunate we were able to open a 612 program for our AGC students. It is students in K 1. This is like a pre-program to get them ready for actual kindergarten. Some of our students are coming in with very little skills, and we are doing like a pre-kindergarten with some of these students, getting them ready to be students as they can access the curriculum as they get older. So at this point of all of our special classes, I think we might have like 4 spots open. We went from 11 tuition students to 23 at this point, and I have 2 more waiting to come in. So it's really showing how great our programs are growing and how great our staff is, and all the work and dedication they put in. So we definitely want to honor that and let them know as well. And that's all I have.
Yeah, I just have one question. Margaret, just have one question. Have we received any responses for the pre-K yet?
Have we received any?
No, usually they come the last day.
At the last minute.
They come at the
And
last
it's
minute?
so
Okay.
lengthy, reports for that. I'm sure if anyone is seriously interested, they are dotting their i's and crossing their t's.
And I just want to touch on that you know, this is a legal financial transaction if we partner with an outside agency, because we need to have a legal agreement that they actually would be using district resources to teach some of our students. So the RFP process was developed by our attorneys and approved. The eventual approval process, if we do have an organization that comes forward, that would need to be approved. So it's not as easy as the district received money, so go hire people to offer pre-K. I know it was announced that way when the state legislature, Senate, and the governor at the time approved the budget that included pre-K money for districts throughout New York State. But it's a very laborious and very legal process, and it needs to be because it is a financial transaction of public dollars. So I just want to let everyone know some of the fine print that leads us, you know, down the pathway of trying to launch this program.
Just right at the time.
Yeah.
It's a really concerned mass.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I don't think we have any committee reports tonight. We're going to take a short recess before we get back to our SMART goal workshop. Just going to take a little stretch your legs break, maybe 5 minutes. All right, so we are back in session. Tonight we're going to be starting our workshop trying to outline our district goals for 2021-2022. This discussion is going to be facilitated by John McCarthy. John's going to give us a brief overview of the work that the board did this summer during our approximately 10 hours of Board of Education professional development meetings, otherwise known as the board retreat. During those meetings, the board discussed its personal internal operational goals, which might include items such as meeting efficiency and operational goals, and also interpersonal communication and participation during meetings. The board operational goals are for the personal growth and operation of the Board of Education. The subject of tonight's workshop will be to identify the board's district goals for 2021-22. These goals are discussed and decided upon collaboratively with the superintendent. They are goals for the operation of the school district. They may be one-year or multi-year goals, which the administration works towards accomplishing. John, thank you for leading our discussion tonight. I know it's been a little bit hard to hear this evening, so depending on how things go, we're definitely splitting this into two parts, but we'll see how well our conversation goes and decide where to break.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here tonight. One of the things that is for sure is these are some challenging times in education and in the world right now for everybody. So first, I just want to commend the board for the work that they've done over the summertime in their board retreats. Once Greg gets the slides up, Greg, we'll start going there. So we actually had 3 retreats during the summertime. It was the first time that this board had the opportunity to meet in over 2 years in a retreat format. So basically, we sit down through an agenda, trying to work on some of the things that the board needs to look at. I'm just waiting on Greg here. So a little anecdote, the last meeting we had was the night of Hurricane Ida. You remember, we were in the boardroom down below, and the windows were shaking, and it was just a horrible night. But again, I just want to commend the board for all the work that they put into these retreats, and they really took it seriously. So as you heard a little bit, part of the retreat is to really start to do some team building. This is a relatively new board. We had a pretty consistent board for a number of years here in Hendrick Hudson. And we had 2 new board members this year and a new board member last year. So it was important for them to spend some time together and learn about each other and have the opportunity to work together. The board also looked at the roles and responsibilities of both the superintendent and the Board of Education. There's really like 3 strands to that. And there's responsibilities that they share together. So we reviewed that. Again, it is a good exercise to do because it allows new board members to really understand their roles and responsibilities as well as the superintendents. We completed an activity that Karen mentioned before that really looked about improving the efficiency and the effectiveness of the board. It was a fun activity, but at the end of it, there was a lot of takeaways where the board was able to say, all right, how does this relate to the work that we're doing? So a good opportunity, again, to just discuss and share ideas about how they can be more efficient and work effectively. A big part of the board's retreats was the board had participated in the self-evaluation. So we had an opportunity to go through the self-evaluation, and the board has, and it's on the website, a beautiful board operating protocols document. So we use that as kind of our guide to look at some of the things that were going on in the self-evaluation and how it matched up or didn't match up necessarily with the board operating protocols. So that was, again, a good opportunity to see how we're supposed to operate, were we operating efficiently. And in an upcoming meeting, I think that's going to be some of the background of as the board starts developing their own goals and how they can improve as a board. That will be something that we will be definitely going back to and revisiting. And then the final piece is what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. The board received some SMART goals training. And I'm going to go through a couple of slides just to review with you the SMART goals. And as Carol said before, tonight we're just going to concentrate on the district goals. And then in the future, we're going to look at doing some board goals using the SMART goals process. So goal setting, we can go on to the next one. So sometimes there's confusion in this. What's the difference between district goals and board goals? So again, district goals should really be concentrating on things like, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but student achievement, professional development, facilities, district and or special initiatives that are going on in the district, and obviously engagement, and that involves community and students. And the board goals, really, they're looking at how they operate. So it's board operations and protocol, board professional development, committee work, as the board serves on a number of different committees, and also how can they, as the board, support the district goals. Right? So that's the distinction between the two. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about SMART goals, and I know it's hard for the people in the back to read this, so I'll go through this. The S stands for being specific, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, really going through the process and how do you get a specifically written goal. It should be measurable, so at the end of the year, or whenever the goal is up, you have an ability to go back and look and see if you actually obtained your goal. It should be something that's achievable, right? So that sometimes you make goals that you know going into it, there's no way we can ever achieve that. And then sometimes it's tough for the people responsible for developing action plans and trying to achieve that goal. So it definitely needs to be achievable. It has to be realistic and relevant to the work that's being done in the district. So you want to make sure that what you're doing as a goal is tied into really your district mission statement and the work that needs to be done to educate the kids every single day. And then the other thing, it needs to be timely, right? You want to have a realistic timeline. Next slide, please. So this is just like a quick chart that we're going to use a little bit later on. Again, it talks about being specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and the timeline. Next slide. So this is an example. And again, I apologize for the audience that can't read this. It's a little tight, so I will go through it. So typically, a Board of Education may come up with a goal like this. The initial goal may be increase student attendance, right? So they come up with that goal, and they would adopt that, and they would move on and try to do things, put some strategies in place to increase student attendance. So if you want to make it a little bit more specific, and you did some research, and maybe, and again, this is all fictitious, but maybe the high school attendance is fine, the middle school attendance is fine, but we're struggling with attendance at the elementary level. So being a little bit more specific, you may say, increase student attendance rates at the 3 elementary schools. Sounds great, but is there any benchmarks? Is there any ways to measure the success of those things, right? So now a more specific and a measurable goal would be, and then obviously you want it to be clear and specific, so everybody who reads this will have the opportunity to understand what the district is trying to accomplish. It would read something like this: we will reduce absenteeism of identified at-risk elementary students, and then parentheses, 8 or more absences during the 2021 school year, so the previous school year. We're going to identify them and increase their attendance by 20% during the 21-22 school year by providing targeted intervention services, right? So it's very specific to what you're trying to do. You're identifying the students that had 8 or more absences. You're going to try and increase their attendance by 20% in the upcoming year. Again, those numbers could change, but it's really specific, so there's a target, and at the end of the day, you'll be able to measure yourself up against those goals. So next slide. And I dare anyone in the back to read this slide, because if you can pull that up, that'd be amazing. But again, on the left-hand side is that long statement I just read. So on the left, this is specific, yes. Is it measurable? How do we measure this? So you would be measuring this through monitoring daily attendance and also participation in the intervention strategies, right? So if the students are not participating in the intervention strategies, there may be a correlation of them not attending school. So you want to have a couple of benchmarks. And again, these are just examples. Is this goal attainable this year? I believe so. Is the goal realistic and relevant? Absolutely. And when does the goal end? When's the timing of this? At the end of the school year. Any questions about that process on the board? No? Pretty clear? Okay, so next slide, please. So again, in the future, I just wanted to make sure that the board had this for tonight's presentation. Again, in the future when you guys meet, you're going to be looking again at the board operations and protocols, board professional development, some committee work, support of district goals, or anything else that you feel that the board is involved in. Again, you want to align these themes with the board self-evaluation. So if you know that there's an area that you fell short on, you want to improve upon that, then maybe one of your goals, right? So we have boards of education that we work with where, ironically, attendance may be an issue for the board. So they chart the attendance at each of the board meetings, and then at the end of the year, they know exactly how many meetings they had 100% attendance at the board meeting. So again, you want to be measurable. And then obviously you want to address any protocol or operational issues that you're dealing with. And you should be using your self-evaluation as the background. Okay, the next one. Again, tonight's focus, we're going to be looking at, this is not an all-inclusive list, we're going to be looking at developing goals that will address student achievement, professional development, facilities, district or special initiatives, engagement, and anything else that the board would like to do as far as board goals. Now the key is you want to look at things that are pressing issues, right? Things that you need to deal with immediately. It could be some stuff that you're currently going through, some initiatives that you're dealing with. We all know about the Princeton Plan is one of those initiatives, so that may be something that you say, okay, even though it's already going on now, we need to maybe develop some board goals around that. So typically we recommend that a board keeps their goals, the district goals, to 3 to 5 goals per year. Especially true when you have some major initiatives going on. So when you have some really major initiatives, again, you want it to be realistic, right? And you want it to be timely. So if you have, and you only have a certain number of people who can provide these action plans to do the actions for the goals, if you have 20, 30 goals, the likelihood of you making all those successful is probably low, right? And not really realistic. So one of the things that's nice about establishing district goals, it then trickles down to the district. So even though you may only adopt 3 to 5 goals, if you think about it, central office then has to take your goals and then make them into their own individualized goals, and how are they going to support the district goals in their work, so there'll be more SMART goals developed at the district level. Then it actually continues down to the building level and the department level, right? So the special education department, they have a meeting, they're going to discuss how they're going to reach the district goals and develop some action plans and goal setting at that level. And then you have it to the, obviously, the building principals, and then hopefully, if it's the culture of the district, then you can get there, the individuals in the district. So we talked about attendance before. You know, what is the role of a counselor in providing those intervention services? What's the role of the teacher in the classroom connecting with the students? So each person in the district hopefully will have a piece of developing their own SMART goals, again, tied into the district goals. So even though you only have 3 to 5, know that it's going to spread out throughout the entire district. Make sense? Okay? So it's up to the board right now. I will share with you that if we were going to start to do this right now, what we would be doing next is in front of you have a worksheet that the first page is kind of like where you're going to put down the big items. So remember when we went back and we looked at the example, the first thing was we're going to look at attendance, right? So I would ask you to just put the big items down. Then we would have a discussion about those items, try to narrow it down to 3 to 5 areas of focus, and then from there, try to wordsmith a specific SMART goal that is measurable. So I'm good either way. I just, it's up to the board how you'd like to proceed at this point.
Do you guys want to try to think of a couple of big picture goals, and then we'll see how that goes? And I'm not expecting us to narrow it down to all of our SMART goals tonight. We'll try to finish that up at the next meeting or the meeting after. But I would like to at least identify some of our big goals.
And if I would just say, Carol, that if it's possible, there may be something you think about later on when you go home that you can potentially bring back when you try to narrow it down. But I think for tonight, it may be good if we could actually share, and I'll bring the mic around, some of our thoughts on, and if we were doing this in a true workshop, I'd say, okay, let's spend a little bit of 3 to 5 minutes of tea time to write down maybe 3 or 5 different goals that you may have. And again, big picture, not trying to write it to a SMART goal yet. And then we can share out and then see what we have in common and then narrow it down to 3 to 5. Does that work?
That works.
Okay, so let's just take 3 to 5
All right,
minutes.
3 to 5 minutes, and then we will go around the room.
We're going to try and pass the microphone around, but one of the suggestions was to read the Henry Hudson vision statement. So again, it's really the purpose of why we exist as a school district. It's a very important statement, and I know that there's a lot of time spent on this. So the mission of the Nyer Hudson School District, a dynamic, innovative, and supportive educational community, is to ensure each student is an engaged, passionate learner who achieves his or her maximum potential and contributes to society. This is accomplished in a system characterized by, these were bullet points, a culture of the highest expectation for all, a rigorous articulated curriculum, diverse, effective instructional strategies and resources, an educational environment that is challenging, creative, exploratory, accessible, and nurturing, and a fully engaged, supportive community. So again, that is the mission statement of the district, very powerful. So I'm going to start here with Alexis, and if Alexis could just go
One
through.
second, John. Can I have the audience sit down, please? Thank you.
So Joe, if you don't mind, I'm going to be passing the mic around, and you can just take the notes. And then what I think would probably be in our best interest, if someone says something that you also have, and you may just want to tweak it a little bit, it's worth mentioning again, so then Joe could put like an asterisk next to that one, so we know that we have 4 or 5 people saying the same thing. So I think you should exhaust your list. Unfortunately, by the time it gets to you, many of your things may already be said, so we're going to work our way this way, okay? All right.
What's that?
Yeah.
All right, so the first on my list is obviously the Princeton plan implementation. I think that has to go smoothly, and I think it involves so many parts of the community and in the district. So that is the first big picture item. And
I agree with Alexis on that, and then also another one would be strengthen our sense of community by fostering a positive relationship with students, staff, parents, and the community at large. Just thinking of how we could get more engagement in the community, holding forums, creating sort of district communications that we could use to sort of brand ourselves and, recognizing that we're, one district, we're sailors with one mascot.
Okay, so I also have a Princeton plan. You want to ask us that? Another one I have is preparing students for new careers and ways of working. So really getting specific around technology and around how we now work a lot more remotely, and it's a different culture in business now, and it's not necessarily about working for a company, but doing something that you're passionate about and that contributes to society on the whole. So something around that, so I couldn't get too smart with it. Solidify financial planning for the 10-year long-term by the 2022 school year. So, as we still learn more about funding and what we can do, just keep working on that. But keeping the long-term horizon in our planning, not just planning for 3 years, 5 years, but planning for 10 years. What does it look like down the road?
Thank you. I'm gonna, you're going to do next now. Work it back in front of you.
one of the things that came out of the retreat was looking for ways to increase community engagement. I think all of us were on board. How we can involve and hear from our community, creating platforms for that kind of communication. I also had a Princeton plan, how we're sharing information, and how we're getting feedback about moving forward. And then the other one I have is looking at our budget and being more critical. We always start with a rollover budget, but is there a way to critically evaluate the programs and how we're spending our money, where contracts within and outside of the district are, and some of that's going to come from our community engagement, hearing what the community wants us to spend our money on. But I don't want to, I'm looking to move forward. So as we're moving forward, how do we critically evaluate what we've done in the past? What do we want to keep? And what is outdated and can maybe be retired? I think that's a big one.
My primary concern for this upcoming year would be, as my colleagues have mentioned, the Princeton plan. Have an avenue to identify, understand, and minimize the issues of the implementation. A lot of the concerns are going to be known up front, but it's going to be a fluid situation, and we need to have a way to collect the issues, identify them, and resolve them in real time. So that is a big concern. And the other one is we can't lose focus on the loss of the Indian Point revenues. We're talking, even with everything we have done since we found out we're losing the revenue of the pilot from Indian Point, that we're still talking about tax rate increases over the next several years of, I believe, 7 to 9%, possibly, Enrique?
Less, now we think 5%.
Which is overly optimistic, I would think. Our last one was what, 7 just now? Close to 7?
Let's not go into a full discussion.
Okay, that is a big concern because when it originally started, we were talking over 10%. We got it down to 7 or less, but that is still an astronomical financial burden on the community for multiple years in a row. You're not talking for 1 or 2 years, multiple years. So those are the two things I see, the principal plan implementation and continued Indian Point, minimizing the cost to the community and spending the money where the community wants it to be spent.
So I also had Christian plan implementation as one of my broad district goals, and I was meditating on them. I agree, we need to be making sure we're not losing our focus on advocacy surrounding that and on the impact it's going to have on our school district. So those were two of them. In addition, I also had a strategic plan, and I think that's going to be an important area for us to focus on because, you know, Christian plan most impacts our elementary schools, but we've got to keep our eyes on the entire district. And I think that is going to be really important. Specifically, you know, we want to make sure that our facilities are being kept up to speed, that we're, you know, supporting our teachers, professional development. There's just the communications with the community is also really key with that. I'd like to see monthly reports, if we can, on our progress towards these things. I think that would be one of the ways we measure how we're doing with it. Yeah, okay, but anyway, that's.
You're head of the class.
Yeah. Lisa's working ahead as usual, and as usual, I have come up with way too many initiatives for this year. So, of course, an effective Princeton plan implementation is one of the tops on my list. We kind of started looking at strategic planning and picking that off before COVID hit, and we had to take a pause for a year. I think it's a lot of these goals that I'm hearing, communication, community engagement, those things could fall under that strategic planning. And it's a good opportunity for us to engage our community and school through the strategic plan. That's a very bottom-up kind of an organizational model. So that would be really effective way to engage the community and find out what they want as far as going forward. I do think that this year we really have to continue to monitor our achievement gaps in our students and continue to mitigate that, and also continue to support our students, teachers, and staff during COVID with the not only equipment and time that they need, but also social emotional support and all of that. And so I think it's important not to forget that there are short-term goals as well as longer-term goals. And of course, financial planning, et cetera, I agree with those things. But those are my top goals: strategic plan, person plan, et cetera.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, a couple comments around the strategic plan. We did discuss that in relaunching the strategic plan before the pandemic. And a lot of these interests can certainly fall within the strategic plan as being a mechanism to receive feedback, input, and then to prioritize how to implement those initiatives. Typically, a strategic plan would take a couple months of data collection and analysis and community engagement. And for community engagement, that could take place by surveys, by focus groups, in-person, virtual meetings, to identify the temperature and the interest of the community. Then what happens is you bring specific teams together to start implementing a work plan to achieve those interests. In between those two very distinct phases would come the board saying, yes, these are in line with our interests, or no, they're not, or these are in line with our interests and we've got to add something, or or something, add another initiative or something to pay attention to. So we've heard strategic plan a couple times, and that is a mechanism to get some of this work done. And the reward of the process is to make sure we have input from a diverse set of stakeholders, and then match that against our interests, and then prioritize and try to get that work done. So we could, if we move quickly and still stay committed to the process, we could have a draft of the priorities of the strategic plan done in late winter or early spring, which then would kick off would kick off the work of implementing these and finding data, and we talked about monthly reports.
You already started identifying a facilitator for that?
Yeah, so we work with BOCES. The reason we work with the BOCES is because they have a wide net of professionals that work in specific areas that support educational endeavors. We also work with BOCES because it's much more cost effective. So we worked with BOCES to identify some facilitators who do this work for a living, who have done it within our region and certainly within New York State. So we could start the communication effort with our stakeholders in the next couple of weeks, and you know, before we break for Thanksgiving or the holidays in December, really be able to drill down in terms of timeline of some deliverables. So that's exciting, but we would need to get moving.
So Joe, at this point, do you feel comfortable identifying which ones kind of rose to the top and which were borderline, and that we need to make a decision tonight at 3 o'clock? We can revisit when we come back in the future, and also you may take something when you go home tonight that says, hey, listen, I'd like to put this on the table as well.
The theme, certainly, leading theme is the implementation of the Princeton plan. There were a couple of comments around short, long-range financial planning. If it's okay, Ari, I'll put your comment or interest in the critical evaluation of our programs and expenses sort of in that short and long-range financial picture. So we have Princeton plan, which is certainly immediate, short and long-range financial projections and fiscal health of the district. We've heard about community engagement and strategic planning that I really think are one and the same. You engage your community to identify your priorities. Some of the others I heard that were not necessarily repeated. Corey talked about identifying new careers or opportunities for work that have come about from the pandemic. You know, making sure kids have the skill set to compete in that sort of those environments.
It was more about how we teach kids. We have to challenge the way of how we teach kids and what we're teaching them. So it was more about challenging ourselves in how we teach our kids going forward, given new technology, new ways of working, new ways of teaching. That there's a lot that we need to challenge. So it's all about the student, and it's about preparing the students for the future. Right? So not.
We also heard of advocacy, making sure we continue our advocacy efforts. We heard from Enrique earlier about the financial health of the district and the pilot payments going away. We also had a comment on facilities planning and life after COVID, academic, social, and emotional, which I would suggest a lot of these initiatives can be an end product that the board chooses to focus on from the strategic plan. So again, I'm not trying to sell us on a strategic plan, but that is a process. It's a process of giving input, identifying feedback from stakeholders, and then prioritizing. So I'd be really curious to see if those are in alignment. I would believe that they are, because we've been focused on these things for the last 2+ years, and that would be a great vehicle to get this work done.
Okay, thank you. So next steps for this group. Originally we were hoping to start writing the SMART goals tonight, but I believe we're going to be having another meeting to actually sit down and try and make these goals more specific. And again, we can always come back and we'll start the meeting by revisiting what we just talked about, and if anyone wants to bring something new to the table. So it is necessary for us to continue to work on the SMART goals. Then once the district goals are developed, then we have to start looking at developing action plans, including goals, objectives for those action plans. And then, as I said tonight, and we want to quantify it, is schedule frequent opportunities for updates and feedback on the particular goals that you guys approved. So again, I think for tonight you did a great job. It was a good start for this process. For the next time you come back, start thinking about SMART goals, particularly around the ones like the Princeton plan, strategic plan, and some of the financial stuff that we were talking about. And Corey would be great to put one together for yours as well, a specific SMART goal. And then also just start thinking about the board and the operating goals if you want to set the board, right? So start thinking about that for the next meeting, next time we get a chance to do this. Okay, turn it back over to the president. This is any questions?
Are you guys okay with this as a stopping point tonight? Do you want to continue on with the discussion? What I was hearing for our three SMART goals, main SMART goals, to reiterate, to make sure that I am correct, was Princeton plan implementation, strategic planning, and short and long range fiscal planning.
I think I'd like to hear more, tabling the discussion until next week, and hearing more about how the strategic plan would be an umbrella. I think that would be helpful for me to see how that would capture our other priorities and see, and whether there's specific and measurable goals that we could go.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I'm concerned about is this strategic plan is like a whole nother process, and I don't want to miss all our chance to do any of these because we're now waiting like another 8 months to sit
Right.
down.
Although we do have to be aware that there's only so many hours in a day and only so much we can do in a year. So if we have some really big things that need to be done, then we kind of have to concentrate on those. And it doesn't mean the other things are done, but maybe they're not as laser focused as they might be in some other years.
Yeah, let me address some of the strategic plan comments. The benefit of a strategic plan is you engage your community. You ask for their input in different ways, whether it's in in-person meetings, small focus groups, surveys. You try to get as much information as you can about what their interests are. That's going to take some time. And it should, because you want to make sure that you hear different voices and that the voices are very, very clear in what they're articulating in terms of interests. That comes back to the board to determine what you may prioritize. And some of those interests from the community through this engagement process may line up with these or they may not. And so that's going to be a conversation you or we are all going to have to make sure our interests are aligned with the interests we heard from the community, and then make a game plan or roadmap from each of those different strands. That's a time-consuming process.
Yeah.
There's really no way to speed it up and be able to still point to that being a credible process. Now, that's not to say we can't evaluate our budget, because we do every year, and we spend hours and hours evaluating our budget, determining programs that we believe should stay or not, or so on and so forth. So there are going to be multiple things happening at once. The plan is a multi-year plan, and some of these goals, while they may be time-bound, while they need to be time-bound to be a SMART goal, they don't all necessarily need to end on the same date. Some of these should be multi-year goals, right? We heard a comment of what our 10-year forecast is. That's going to move and is going to be very, very fluid based on factors we can control. So I want to try to put you at ease in terms of what the strategic plan is and what it isn't. It's a plan, it's a roadmap, it's a set of priorities. It's the process of how we get there and get input and feedback that is really important and shouldn't be skipped.
So are you suggesting just two goals really, Princeton plan and strategic plan? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think we should have a financial goal. We're talking about what Bill had mentioned. What Bill had mentioned about our future. We have a multi-year. It's almost a 10-year tax projection based on some assumptions. Two assumptions. One, increasing our expenses at 2%, right around cost of living. As well as a slow increase in state aid. Our tax projections over the next 8 to 10 years hover around 5 to 6%. Now, that is the end result of a series of calculations, many of which we can't control. State aid, pilot arrangements, maybe Indian Point goes on the tax rolls and we do well or we don't do well. That needs to remain our focus because every year we ask the public to support a budget. In the last 2 years, we've been asking them to write a check of 6% more and 4.5% more because the 8 years prior to that, our average tax increase in our district was 1.04%. So that has to happen and will happen regardless, because the budget process, and Ricky and I were talking earlier, we want to start in November, but really in January, every meeting from January until May, we are talking about the $85 million of our expenses.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I think we have a really good starting point, or, continuing point, I should say. Try to write up some SMART goals at home before our next meeting, and then we'll try to coordinate those and actually come up with our SMART goals, hopefully at the next meeting. I'm always hopeful that we're going to get things done quicker than we do. I'm always impatient.
Do you want us to send us so you can populate them before we come?
Say that again?
Do you want us to send you our goals so you can populate them before we come? That way they're all written?
Let me think about that, because this is a discussion that we should be having in public.
Not for discussion, just to populate so that you have everyone, like.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The whole
Yes,
assignment?
I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. All right, any other questions before we move on?
I'm good.
All right, so that brings us to our next audience comment section, which is an audience comment section just on agenda items. The same rules apply as the audience comment section for non-agenda items. I'm not going to read the whole sheet again, unless someone really wants me to. I'd be happy to if someone wants me to. Do we have anybody signed up for this section of the comments? Okay, thank you, Carmen. All right, so we do have one more item on our agenda, and that is under the board comments, new business, and this is a resolution about restoring the salt reductions.
So SALT is the state and local tax deduction that we used to be able to take on our taxes. And Westchester Putnam School Boards Association has drafted a community letter as well as a resolution that we can consider passing and sharing around with our community, which would encourage our representatives to advocate for the restoration of the deduction so that we could begin deducting our state and local taxes again. So what's attached in the email, and I think in everything, the materials for tonight, was the community letter that could be sent out, which just goes to a voter voice. I don't know if people are familiar with those, but what they do is you can just populate, with your address, and it sends it to all of your elected representatives. And that would go to our Congress people, our senator, and then also our New York State representatives too, just so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And then there's a resolution that we could consider passing as well. And it's kind of a timely, time-sensitive issue because apparently the SALT deduction is one of the things that's being discussed currently in Congress and in the federal.
Does anybody have questions or comments about this? Sir Enrique can help fill us in also if you have any financial questions. Can I get a feeling on how people feel about this?
Whether we want to support it or not?
Whether we want to support it or not. We can make a motion to accept this resolution and then we can do a vote, but I thought we would have a discussion a little bit first.
Why would we not want to support it?
Yeah, I guess.
I can't
Everybody,
think of a reason to
people have
not
different
support it.
opinions. I'm
Yeah.
open to different opinions. All right, so would you like to?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution that I've submitted.
Anyone second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, that was a much faster discussion than I anticipated. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. And unless anybody else has new business, sorry, I forgot All right, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor? Thank you very much to everybody for attending tonight. Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 6th.